Cousins liking him.
John was just giving his take on cold open. Go ahead, keep going, John.
Yeah, I put on my Cowboy hat in solidarity with the Cowboys, rooting for Jerry's squad, Dak Prescott, who is we'll get into the MVP discussion, as well as what a season, what a great time in the NFL. I mean, you got the Niners, the Eagles, the Cowboys. Like you just can't. Honestly, the Packers have thrown their hat back in the ring. Like this is why the NFL prints cash. I saw our buddy Ethan sent me a little screenshot of last week, the Pac-12 rating on Friday night. I think is the biggest Pac-12 championship game, right, of the era,
right?
In terms of importance, did almost 10 million people. Which
are you about to make a Big Ten? Are you about to compare it to the Big Ten champ game?
No, I didn't even see it. My point is relative, and I'm not. People probably think I was always shit on the NBA. Well, it's just always like a BP fastball. Those NBA games that night, with the biggest brands, it was like Suns, Lakers, and one other, I think Celtics, Sixers. Neither of them sniffed 1.5 million. So the Pac-12 game, Washington, Kalen DeBoer, Lanning, and the crew, we're doing 10 million. And those games, like I don't know if you saw on the timeline last night, but I
was not on the timeline last night.
Trevor Lawrence and those guys. So I just looked on Twitter. You would have thought that Michael Jordan was playing Magic Johnson and Adam Silver has just built the greatest thing of all time. And it's like, it can't, like this in-season tournament is a huge hit.
Yeah.
Well, it's like we're celebrating guys caring about regular season games.
That's right.
But if the same amount of people that have been watching NBA games, which is going the wrong way, is still watching, it's not successful. The whole point was to get more people to watch.
Right.
That's the whole point of this, right? People are already going to the game. They don't count, or the million people watching. But if 13, 15 million people watch Jake Browning against the Jags, like, what are we even talking? Like, the college football argument, it is crazy how eye-opening the college football numbers are. It has to be a historic year. And I also had a take because like the Florida State game on Saturday night doubled from last year. Now, I would say over the last several years with Clemson, the ACC championship game has been completely irrelevant, but still, like almost like 8 million people watched. But there was a lot on the line. It's like, everyone was kind of paying attention. I bet if you're all the SEC people, you're like, what is this team going to look like because of the implications? Well, now with 12 team, that game wouldn't have mattered, because even if Florida State would have lost and been 12-1, they'd still get to the playoff as like an 11 seed. So it's like, I do wonder if the impact on the importance of every game, college football is still going to dominate as the number 2 sport in America, but I wonder if the importance, the true relevancy of the game will have the same juice next year with like, oh yeah, Florida State's in no matter what.
Right. I think the ratings, that big ratings weekend will shift from championship weekend, because you're right, to the weekend before, where being in the top 12 is really going to matter, right? Who did Missouri play Thanksgiving weekend, John?
I don't know.
I don't either. But I know right now they're a top 12 team. Like, so I know their game that weekend would have really mattered, right? Arizona State, Arizona on the verge of being a top 12 team, like that rivalry game, ASU with nothing to play for except to beat their rival. But you're going to get games where, oh my God, we could knock them out of the 12-team playoff. So
LSU played like A&M. They were like 13th, right?
Yeah. So I think like you're going to look at the end of the year next year and you go, oh, maybe ACC champ ratings are down, but first of all, one fewer championship game next championship weekend because no Pac-12. But I think like on the balance, I think the ratings will be up, and I hate the argument because I personally have always loved it. It sounds like you do too. The individual, like how every week in college football is basically win or die. But I also get like, I think the big picture, there will be more games that matter down the stretch. So it will result in more ratings.
Well, let's use the Oregon-Washington game as an example. Both those teams would have been in, win or lose, right, in that game.
Right.
But you would be like, well, Washington's playing for the top 2 or 3 seed, right, in a bye, and Oregon with a convincing win are probably getting a top seed too. That game still would have huge it would still be very relevant. Same Georgia, Alabama, right? Alabama's playing for the bye, right? So that
we're talking about home games too, John. I think about how much home games are going to matter in the first round of the 12-team playoff.
Is the SEC going to the Pac-12 and Big 12 model of just 2 best teams next year? Do you know? Are they splitting divisions?
I don't know. I don't know.
I don't think they have. I guess they would probably have to because we're Texas and Oklahoma. That I guess they have talked about the pods. Remember that?
That's right. I mean, they were talking about 20-team league. The Big 12, right? I mean, these are huge leagues. So,
how many teams? SEC's 20-team league.
I think SEC's 16, going to be 18. I think SEC is going to be 18.
And the Big 10 is now what?
The Big 10 is now 16, I believe. Could be wrong about that. I mean, it's around, it's those types of numbers.
They're no longer the Big 10, but it's just such an easy thing to say. You're not going to change the name.
Don't change it. That's right. Just because the number of teams doesn't fit in your name doesn't mean you don't wear the name. Just because the hat doesn't fit on the screen doesn't mean you don't wear the hat. For those of you listening to the pod, John is John just looks like you're just dying to hold open a door and say, "Ma'am." Which is just probably one of the best parts of wearing a cowboy hat is just saying, "Ma'am."
How about them Cowboys?
How about them Cowboys? We are brought to you by our friends at Tito's Handmade Vodka. Tito's Handmade Vodka, numero uno. John, I've got a Tito's toast to you knew this was coming. The Jaguars training staff who went to the Raiders school of how to awkwardly handle a franchise quarterback. I was not watching when it happened. Was not able to watch the game on Monday night. I got several texts from just to your point on ratings, from dudes who are like basketball guys that just said, "Do you see what they're doing with Trevor Lawrence right now?" To the point that I had to go look and figure out what were they doing with Trevor Lawrence. And still nothing funnier than putting a hurt guy in the front of a cart like the Raiders did with Derek Carr, but making
Saints
the guy walk all the way to the locker
Saints
room.
did it too. Saints did it too. Maybe Derek just likes the front.
Making the guy walk to the locker room is so that's my Tito's toast, John.
Yeah, and I do think the low hanging fruit is simply, I would say per capita, the two states in America that have the most golf carts per people would be where I'm sitting right now, which is the West Coast golf mecca, and then Florida, which is obviously the East Coast golf mecca.
Peachtree City, Georgia, I think is the golf cart capital of the world. They have miles of golf cart trails, like what Davis, California is to bikes. They are to golf carts, and kids can drive their golf carts.
To not I think it's easy to crush the training staff. I saw Coward went on a rant. I think it reflects the ownership to not what are we doing? And the part, if you weren't watching it live, it's hard to quite understand. It's one thing to carry him off. He slams his helmet. He's pretty mad.
Yeah.
He kind of got up on a knee. Maybe the walk from the sideline to wherever the Jags locker room was felt like a 7-mile hike, because 5 minutes later they go back. Now, part of it is walking really slow, but it was in the back of the confines under the stadium, and they're just walking. It's like, where is this locker room? Maybe they were taking him to the X-ray room. I don't know. Luckily, it turns out, and you never know, that it looked really bad. Little basketball. This happens a lot in the NBA where you're like, oh, that guy's career's over. And then the next game he's in the starting lineup. Yeah. I saw Doug Peterson say today that just an ankle sprain. We're not ruling him out yet. So it might have been because it didn't look like it looked like he ripped his knee.
Right.
Walker Little, who fell on him, didn't come back either. It was just collateral damage. He was just out. And even Joe Buck kept saying Walker Little didn't limp off the field, but he's on the sideline with his helmet off. So it was a bad play for the Jags that ended up losing the game. I mean, that's part of it. They lost the game. Quarterback injured. The fucking Texans just won. There's a 1-game difference. They still play each other. How about Jake Browning, pride of Folsom High School? I mean, is that the best game he's ever played in his life? 32 of 37 in the NFL on Monday Night Football.
I saw him play a state championship game against De La Salle. He was better against the Jags than he was against De La Salle that day. I can tell you that.
Do you follow Joe Davidson on Twitter?
I do. Sacramento Bee.
He tweeted last night a picture, because obviously he knows Troy Taylor well, who tweeted a picture, or not, he tweeted out the picture, but he texted, Troy Taylor did, to Davidson, obviously, just blue-collar coach and a beat reporter, for high school sports in Sac State, of him and his son at the game rooting on Jake Browning.
Oh,
I mean,
cool.
what a cool moment. For as shitty as it was for the Jags, that had to be one of the coolest moments of Jake Browning's life.
That got to be. I mean, he played with Dante Pettis and John Ross, and those two guys combined for 40 touchdowns that year. So They had some big games, but they didn't play well in the playoff game, right? They played in the college football playoff game. Bad
matchup.
Bad matchup. Tito's handmade vodka John, a toast to everybody involved there in Trevor Lawrence's recovery. Although JW on the stream says bulky praying it's an ACL. Distilled and bottled in Austin, Texas, 40% alcohol by volume, namely 80 proof, crafted to be savored responsibly.
DiSandro?
How about his brother on the staff? Did you know his brother, DiSandro's brother on the staff? Did
Not
you know that guy there?
I saw Howard Eskin. Did you see his tweet about how they were all
I'm already
together?
excited.
Well, like he's like this whole story, and I am in agreement, is so dumb. To me, it's not on Dom. It's not even on Greenlaw. It was on the referees. No one needed to be ejected. He said the stupidest part about this entire thing that everyone's making a big deal about it is after the game, underneath the tunnels, Dom, Greenlaw, and John Lynch were all having huge laughs underneath the tunnel together.
Yeah, I mean, it worked out right for Greenlaw that the Niners won. Dom had looked, for a guy who's probably pretty unshakable, just you and I talked about this the other day, he was not trying to have his moment, right? He wasn't fired up about Connor Barwin gave him this big hug on the way off. Dom was not fired up about it. But yeah, it was you need in a rivalry, John, not just crazy shit you need weird stuff, and as dumb as it was for the NFL is better for it happening, right? You think about that, the refs, we shouldn't have thrown him out. But just from NFL bizarre, what's the storyline on a Monday? There's one.
Well, I was thinking about this, now it's different because they're not in the same division, but the Red Sox and Yankees really started to go to another level when Pedro threw Zimmer. You need to have some just curveballs in it.
I heard Grant compare that to this.
I would say it was a lot different.
Just the similar, visually.
If that would have, I would say that the same thing would if it's Cowboys and Eagles, right? Because part of it's the history,
right?
The Niners and Eagles. This is kind of self-created the last 18 months. They're not a rival. They're just, currently they are. But if this would have happened, hell, in the Packers game, but I am glad it happened. I am personally no one should get fined. No one should get in trouble.
I'm with you.
Yep. Florio was right and they need to drop the hammer. And I think he knows what he's doing. But it's give me a fucking break.
We are in agreement. We're in agreement on that. I don't need Dom on the field breaking up fights, but he shouldn't be banned from the sideline. Who cares? I have a feeling he'll be on good behavior.
I played golf yesterday with Steven Spock, who's former Fresno State long snapper who was here.
John, Steven Spock won the 2003 2004 intramural basketball championship at Fresno State.
Big motherfucker. He's here for the Cardinals alumni weekend, and Steven Spock made the Eagles as an undrafted free agent rookie back in 05 or 06. I forget the exact year, but he was telling me stories. When I got there, Dom was in charge, but I had always heard stories. Dom used to work for this guy named Butch, and Butch was the longtime Dom forever, former cop, but also intertwined, Italian mob, it's all intertwined back there. It's very, very difficult. I see a lot of people talking about it to I wouldn't understand it. And I love mob movies and stuff. The culture of the city, California is really corrupt in the sense of the businesses, tech, they get to run everything, and financially in Philly, it's hard to explain the connections with everything. Money does buy you stuff, but it's just so different. And Butch and Dom would not exist. And if that guy did exist, they would be beloved. This guy is kind of a cult hero and been for a while with the Eagles, right? And I think he's gone to another level after this incident. But the guy that plays that role, but Spock was telling me stories that Butch, some of the shit that used to happen with their players, and no one would ever hear about it. It's like stories we used to hear with Eddie DeBartolo and Jerry and some of those guys, or even back the Raiders in the 70s. This shit was happening with the Eagles. Not that long ago. It's much more it's not really possible anymore with dash cameras and stuff. it's all kind of above board. Like you legitimately have to stay out of trouble. But I just
because head of security means fixer in another world. Right?
Yeah, because this is the business they're in is winning football games. Like this isn't. I say this all the time when people get tossed, and my issue with that is always like the moral police. Like this, we're not in morality here. We're about doing big ratings. We're about winning and losing games and just doing it fairly. And I hate it when. That's why I can't wait for the umpires to be phased out with the robo-umps. And I understand like being a ref is difficult, right? It is. I'm not acting like, the NBA has had they literally had a guy in with the mob, but like calling a foul at full speed is not easy. But I just feel too often in basketball when guys get ejected, obviously in football, it doesn't happen as much. I hate it when they interject themselves. Like no one's there to see you guys.
Right.
You guys get to play a pretty big role regardless. Like you don't need to throw guys out. I just hate that, especially in football, just because the game is so important just because there aren't that many of them.
Also, the game is so violent, right? So a guy grazing another guy's face with trying to smush him in the face it's not in the top 25 most violent things that are going to happen in the next 5 plays, right? I saw one of the this was a clip that went around, I don't know, a week or two ago. The Nuggets were like, I think maybe they were playing in Minnesota and Jokic got ejected from a game. And one of the broadcasters was basically like, oh, great, because everybody came here to watch whatever, Craig Counsell play, right? Which is 100% true. Like these tickets are so expensive. You should be looking for reasons to keep guys in games, not looking for reasons to get guys out of games.
It's unacceptable as a business.
Yeah, it's forget about it is bad. Forget about like accountability to the outside world. Internally, it's just bad business, right? Now, this is the reason I went when you said get the robots in for the umpires. The one area where it's actually good business is umpires and managers screaming at each other or players kicking dirt and whatever. It's a lot harder to get. It used to be a lot harder to get, but they don't, that part of the game, it was fun. Like you need villains, right?
It doesn't really, Gabe Kaplan.
No, but the game got rid of that, which actually in the interest of speed is good, right?
If you fire Angel Hernandez, you can delay the robo-umps.
Or you want Angel out.
Well, everyone who doesn't.
Well, that's the thing. That's my point. It's like Angel Hernandez exists. People know about that guy. Very rare. To have an umpire that everybody universally hates like that. I
think Angel is proven to be a terrible human being, though. Like there are bad referees, and there's that. Like that's just that is. I don't know. He's historically like the worst umpire of all time. And
you said bad human being. I thought maybe I'd missed a story about Angel Hernandez.
They can't fire him because he sues them for racial discrimination.
Okay.
It's like well known. You have never seen that with Angel Hernandez?
Well, yeah, that sounds familiar. I haven't. I'm just saying, like, he's
like a
human being. I thought maybe there was some assault charge or gambling or something I didn't know about.
Wouldn't shock me, but I think it's well documented that he's just a bad person and nobody likes him. Like Scott Foster and Chris Paul. Obviously, they have.
What is that about?
Remember Chris Paul said his kid. Remember, was it? I don't want to say the wrong name here, Joey Crawford, but Tim Duncan had a guy where it kind of like felt like it crossed the line. Remember? Guy tossed him out on the
Tito tossed him for laughing.
Yeah. On the bench.
On the bench. I don't know.
There is no place.
Joey's the guy that Joey was always Stephen Vogt's favorite ref.
There's just no place to me in professional sports for Angel Hernandez. I think it was capped off this year at the end of the season. Remember Bryce Harper who got tossed for that like check swing, and that was Angel. And it's just like I don't know. I just think Scott Foster's not that good, even though they claim that he always checks out to be good. So who knows?
I don't understand why you just can't have PFF for the refs. Like, let's just look and see who's the best.
Because the referees and government, man. You can be after your job and keep it.
You notice who you haven't seen around this year? You've seen Jerome Boger lately?
He got demoted?
I don't know. I texted Dickinson today. I'm like, hey, where's Jerome Boger? He's like, I think he retired. I'm like, oh.
There was were you watching the Chiefs game against the Packers when Valdez Scantling, they didn't have any timeouts and like was trying really hard to get out of bounds. There was like a girl ref and she claimed that he got out of bounds and the Packers went nuts. It's like, I understand those are, that's coin flip. I understand the argument of
you just don't like
overcall.
No, what you're saying is it's not about your feelings.
No.
Yeah, eliminate that completely. It's about the fans and it's about the product and it's about the players getting to decide the game. I agree. In fact, I would like college basketball. There's been this talk for a long time amongst like basketball people. Like, let's give the guys 6 fouls. Like, why are we fouling people out of games? Which I'm in agreement, right? The counter would be, well, now they're going to foul more. But these teams have like 6 good players, maybe, right? It's you keep your best players on the floor.
Bronny made his debut yet?
No, I think he's tracking towards coming back in January. Don't remember he had that cardiac arrest in the summer.
I thought he was cleared
to practice, I think, unless you've seen something. But when I saw that he was cleared to practice maybe a week or 2 ago, I think they were targeting like January to play.
I did see a headline that LeBron told his team that whenever he does make his debut, if we're playing, I won't be at the game. Like, I'll be at Bronny's game.
Amazing.
Which I would say if he's, and listen, I understand, family, you're allowed to do that once the issue happens with the heart, like 100%. I might make fun of him. No heart, like he just leaves the game to go watch his debut against UC Davis. Totally understand now. I will not make fun of him, despite loving. Before we dive into the 49ers, the Eme Udoka against LeBron James.
Yeah.
I think Eme Udoka. Did you see the slow motion where they got the words?
Mm-hmm.
I think Eme Udoka symbolizes me as the consumer who was born in the 80s, who grew up on Michael and then to Kobe. The best players were just mean. They would belittle. They would say things now that, the radicals don't control Twitter anymore, but they tried to get everyone canceled, and we loved it. There was an element to the NBA. And LeBron represented like, don't call me a bitch, man. Like Adam Silver's NBA.
My theory was he knew the audio would come out and wanted to sound like the good guy.
I think that LeBron truly kind of is like this created meme of like the way he talks. Because remember, it's like, I got 3 kids, man. Don't talk to me like that. When do you know what Michael Jordan would have said to Eme Udoka? One, LeBron, it was a BP fastball. The guy just got fired for fucking someone in an organization. Like, you could have just gone right back at him pretty easily, and it was your tactic. Honestly, it's a pretty embarrassing moment for LeBron. I thought, just like, what are we?
I expected a lot more.
There was a softness.
I expected a lot more when the audio came out.
Me too.
You see the woman in the background react as if she just heard the worst thing she'd ever heard in her life?
No.
There's a woman right behind Udoka who's like, as they're talking, she's like,
I like Eme Udoka.
John, the chat is, oh, by the way, one other note, 27 million people, since we're talking ratings, I saw somebody put it here, but I saw it earlier. 27 million people watched the Niner Eagle game, which it's the highest rated Sunday game this year in the NFL. So your primetime games are still your Monday nights, I assume your Sunday nights, maybe that means Sunday during the day. But it's the highest rated Sunday game of the NFL season. 27
the Turkey Day, I think the opening weekend.
The Thursday games.
I think Thursday night opening week 1 does, like 30, 40 million people. And that Cowboy game did 40 plus million people on Thanksgiving. I would imagine the Christmas games are huge. But if you just ask me, like, what's an enormous number for Sunday afternoon, huge CBS or huge Fox, I'd say like anything above 25 million is pretty massive, right? For a regular season game. Again, to put this in perspective, the NBA is struggling to get 1 million people to watch on their good regular season game.
Big Ten, a little disappointed with the 10 million they got for their champ game. That was down. I think it was one of the lowest rated Big Ten championship games.
Well, it is an awful game to watch.
Yeah, I mean Iowa, but that's 10 times 1 million.
They did just do 20. They did do 20 the week before.
Yeah, they're fine. That's the point. I mean, but when you said like when you asked what's a big Sunday, like in my head, anything you start getting like to me the biggest Niner like Saturday day games to me feel like they're generally in the 18 to 19 million range, right? I mean, I think that's a big number. This game was the game everywhere except I think the LA market. So it's basically the whole nation had this game, which is part of what helps it get to 27 million.
I wonder how many people watch Panthers Panthers Tampa. Over under 5?
Yeah, I mean, you know what? That thing probably did 6 million.
But it would only be on probably in those 2 markets, right?
Yeah, I would think. And even in those markets, you're going to have a few people that are
especially
watching the YouTube
especially
now with
Florida.
YouTube TV. Yeah. So,
But if
anyway,
I have
there's the
YouTube
number.
TV and I don't have the package, right? I
It's just
essentially
regular.
just get. I wouldn't have the Niner game, correct?
Yeah. Yeah. You'd have whatever your local game is, just like any other TV provider.
You still get all the local Raider games?
Well, John, I just
Hard to
happen
tell, probably.
Yeah, I mean, yes, I think so. Fresno, one of the local games on Sunday was the Saints game.
Makes sense.
Saints Lions. I don't know how national that game was, but maybe that was it might have actually, that was Joe Davis, so it actually might have been a pretty national game. Maybe it wasn't a Derek Carr game.
I think it was the morning Fox game.
Yeah,
like the morning Fox.
Well, you're right. It was
lean national. I mean, it was. I don't know if you looked around the entire slate. It was fucking terrible.
I know, but this is us every week, man. It was bad, and then you look at it's like historic ratings for the top 4 games. So, Ty Davis Price got cut. Somebody just said in the chat. 3rd round pick.
About that?
A lot of people are saying it. Does that count?
It's hard. It's hard to trust.
I don't know. It felt trustworthy as we're doing this Tuesday afternoon.
Yeah, he got waived. He got waived.
There you go. So,
for whatever reason, that draft class has kind of been a disaster given the 3 picks they've had. One, impossible to judge based on injury, but let's face it, you'd have to give Danny Gray. He was covering kicks last year when healthy, which is a powerful thing to do. So he's not a nothing player, right? If you
but I also don't. Yeah. Okay.
Hard to crack the starting lineup for the 49ers.
True.
At that position. Like at minimum, he's going to be the 4th wide receiver. And then the way they play, Ray can just duplicate Debo in the sense of like they do like a lot of line of scrimmage plays, right? End around screens. Like Ray can do that more than Danny. I mean, Ray's played at Clemson. It's not like Ray looks at Danny Gray thinking that guy's fucking better than him, right? And I mean, Ray's played in the NFL a lot longer than him. So
I mean, the chances that he has Ray's career are low.
Slim to none. But Drake Jackson's been a disaster. And obviously Ty Davis Price, not even arguable. I mean, he got beat out immediately by an undrafted free agent in Mason. Right? I mean, he just got beat out, right? Just on the depth chart for the last couple of years. Like Mason was ahead of him. And I think sometimes, and this is the hard part about the 49ers, is not a lot of stuff comes out because they don't have like shitbirds. That when you do act a little weird or for whatever, it might just be football wise. Maybe they just don't think you're studying hard enough. Maybe they simply don't think you're running hard enough. Maybe they don't think you pick up the whatever it is. You just kind of get phased out quietly. They phase you out quietly. Ayuk was loud because it was weird. They had drafted him, but like star names. All of a sudden, it's like, where's that guy? It's like, oh yeah, he's just out of the mix. And then all of a sudden, he's just off the team. Like that's where this is. Maybe they resigned him to practice squad. I don't know. But my point is, this isn't just like needed a spot, needed a number. Bullshit. I mean, they don't like this guy right now.
They added Logan Ryan. They signed Logan Ryan.
I know, but you could remove, like, for them to pick this guy, like you got to pick one guy.
Right.
And if he's that guy for a reason, you could have put other guys on the team. Could have just removed a DB. I mean, you could have removed whoever, some random D lineman. Could remove anybody. You chose him. And him being inactive every week and being lapped by all these guys. Like, say what they want or say what anyone wants about Mitchell. Clearly, Kyle really likes him, right? I mean, they trust him. I would imagine if you asked Anthony Lynn, right, Kyle, John, the players, like whatever Elijah Mitchell does, just work ethic-wise, training-wise, attentive in the meetings, like Niner standard. Whatever Ty Davis Price does and all that stuff that when you work for a team that you kind of talk about all the time, like, yeah, this guy's just fucking kind of slacking. Or whatever it is, man. He doesn't practice hard enough.
Right.
Like you get in that environment with these good teams, like you get fucking lost. The Patriots, how many guys just got weeded out immediately? Like, yeah, it didn't really last. Andy Reid, like now Kyle Shanahan, that there's a really, really high standard. And I think he's a good example of like, because you watch those highlights in college, like he definitely has physical abilities. He's doing it against the SEC. It just didn't pop from the beginning with that guy.
that class is looking pretty bad, except for, Brock Purdy.
A wise man told me a while ago that works for the Jets. He said they had like 7 or 8 high picks over a 2-year stretch. He's like, we could hit on 8 or 9 of them. The receiver, Garrett Wilson, if Becton had become a star, Bryce Hall or Breece Hall, Sauce Gardner, if all these guys, Johnson, the pass rusher from Florida State, if all these guys become Pro Bowlers and we miss on the quarterback, we're in trouble. But if we miss on all those guys and Zach Wilson becomes a top 10 quarterback, everyone around here is getting extensions and becoming really, really rich. And that's a good example. Like, I don't know if you've seen the latest on Zach Wilson won't come back. Regardless, like, that's a reflection to me of the Jets. Like, they are a debacle. And I think the 49ers are a good example. And this happens forever with good teams. Miss on some players. Who gives a shit? Like, Ty Davis price sucks. No one cares. That whole draft class is just dog poop right now. But they got Brock Purdy. Like, ultimately, if I'm Woody Johnson, I would understand him going, we're paying this guy $9 million. These other quarterbacks you're throwing out there fucking stink. Just play Zach Wilson till the end of the season. Like, I don't even think that's quote unquote meddling. It's like, I'm not watching Tim Boyle anymore. Where it's like, if I'm Jed, I might not even be able to point Ty Davis Price out of a lineup. It's just irrelevant. It really is. And that's why when you're good, everyone's finding out Belichick sucks at drafting. He's missing a lot of picks over the years. It didn't matter. The Warriors missing a lot of picks. When they're winning 60, 70 games, no one cared.
Right.
You start struggling to get the playing game, everyone's freaking out. I mean, it'd be hard, right? Tom Brady's just going to be the best draft pick of all time for the Patriots. He won them 6 Super Bowls and became the greatest quarterback of all time. He was a 6th-rounder. That's how, even if Purdy goes to the Hall of Fame and wins a couple Super Bowls, he's not as good as that, right? 6 Super Bowls. And he was really the driving force in like 4.5 out of the 6.
Yeah, I mean, Tom would have a chance of being the best pick of all time if he went 1, if he was like in the Goff Wentz draft and they picked him over another quarter. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, that's how good he is. And then you add to it, it's, yeah, I don't
how many Super Bowls would Purdy have to win to at least be in the argument with Tom as being the greatest pick of all time?
3 is my first instinct.
Because Tom was 199. Purdy is
4.
Purdy was 262. So I mean, that's a pretty wide gap of picks.
Yeah. I mean, you could argue 1 Super Bowl puts him in the conference. Doesn't put him ahead of Tom, but puts him in the top 10 of greatest picks of all time, right?
Well, I would say if he were to win the MVP this year, he would be immediately a top 10 draft pick of all time, right?
Yep.
MVP.
That's an interesting list.
Well, because like Tony Romo is a good example. He's got to be one of the great undrafted free agents of all time. But I think one playoff game, a lot of stats, won a lot of regular season games. And he was a really good player, but like never won an MVP. Never went to a championship game.
Think about how quickly Brock's become the best last pick of all time. Just to give you an idea of like how you don't find any value there, right? Or there was a kicker who had a nice career who was drafted last, I think. That's about it. So we win an MVP and a Super Bowl. I mean, John, I did a video the other day. You and I have not talked about this because I was like, how many guys are under this level of pressure? Because I was thinking about Brock from an MVP standpoint of just, he could win the MVP this year. It would be one of the most unbelievable MVPs that's ever been won in any sport. And if they were to not win the Super Bowl, it would be disappointing. It's crazy. Rarely is that the case, right? 3 second-year quarterbacks in the history of the sport have won the MVP. Lamar, Mahomes, and Marino in 84. And looking back, those Dolphins teams, or that Dolphin team was a 5-1 favorite to win the Super Bowl at the beginning of the year. They were one of like the top 3 odds to win the Super Bowl. Niners this year were 10-1, one of like the top 5 or 6. So there's never really been a guy that's won an MVP there hasn't, other than Marino. He's the only other one that's kind of won the MVP in year 2 on a team that kind of feels like Super Bowl or bust. My guess, I need like Mayoko or somebody here. My guess is that Dolphins team, they probably not been, they'd won a championship like 10 years to 12 years before, right? Maybe they'd won another since the undefeated team. Did they win one, but since the undefeated team in 84?
No, not in the 70s, but I do think that they drafted Dan Marino with the 27th pick, so they were clearly a pretty well-run franchise. Maybe they made a trade or whatever. I don't exactly know their previous record, but he was not like the number 3 overall pick, and then all of a sudden turned him 2 years later into being good. A lot like Mahomes, right? Mahomes got to go to a playoff team.
Yep, that's a good comp. I just wonder, did they feel like they were in their...
Same with Brock. So I guess
what I'm saying is, like, did they feel like they were in their championship window right then, or did they feel like, hey, we got a shot for the next decade? Because it feels like, the Niners right now have been on this championship march longer than anybody else in the league. If you go back to Harbaugh, from a franchise standpoint of just being right there and being in the mix. And, there's just a lot of pressure on the organization, on the players, on Kyle having lost the Super Bowl the way he did. And then in walks Brock with kind of all the answers, everything they needed out of the blue.
The Dolphins had been, I would probably imagine they were a lot like the Niners, like late 70s, 11-5, lost wild card, 10-6, lost division, 8-8, 11-4, 7-2. So that must have been a strike year. Marino's first year, which he was the full-time starter, 12-4. I mean, he got to go. I think Mahomes, it's crazy. You're talking about Dan Marino, Mahomes, and Brock Purdy, but they all do share the same characteristic of going to a really good team. I mean, Don Shula is one of the great coaches of all time, and obviously Andy Reid. I mean, I would say it's going to go down as a better coach than Don Shula, and probably, I mean, is Andy Reid, when it's all said and done, going to be known as like the top 2 or 3 coach of all time? He's going to make a case for it. He wins another one,
right? Is he third after Walsh and Bill?
I would say, how's he not going to, at minimum, be a top 5 coach of all time, right, with his resume?
Yeah, I mean, how many more Super Bowls does he need to make that a no-brainer?
Well, I would say
1, 2.
I mean, a little before our time, but I think Lombardi, just gets the nod.
All right, we'll talk modern era.
Yeah, post 1980.
Alex says Roger Staubach was a 10th rounder, and Jonas says Bart Starr was in the 17th. Were the rounds like 9 teams back then, though? Or
well, like I just typed into Google best 7th round picks of all time, and the list is pretty shitty. After a couple guys like Shannon Sharp, that's an all-time 7th round pick, right? Hall of Famer, easily top 5 tight end. You get to a couple picks, and all of a sudden you're looking at Julian Edelman, who's an all-time 7th round pick, but like Bo Jackson, 7th round pick. Bo Jackson's not a 7th round pick. It's baseball factoring in. Bo Jackson's a number 1 overall pick, especially in his era. But you get to Donald Driver and some guys really quick, right? There are not, like, the best quarterback I see on this list, guy, is Ryan Fitzpatrick, which Ryan Fitzpatrick as a 7th round pick is a fucking
all-time
incredible pick.
What do you have, like a 17-year career?
Yeah, but a guy like that, he doesn't, like, ultimately the Broncos go, yeah, we get credit for the 7th round pick because Shannon Sharp played the majority of his career for us. So when the guy goes on other places to do it, like the Patriots with Julian Edelman, he was our guy. Like, ultimately, Ryan Fitzpatrick, I don't even know who drafted him, but he played on 75 teams. Like, part of, to me, what makes a great pick is that guy plays for you for so, like the 49ers, when they got Joe Staley at the end of the first round, they get their starting left tackle for like 12 years. He's got to be a stalwart on your squad. What makes Draymond one of the great 2nd round picks of all time, or Jokic or anything, it's like that guy, his entire career was with me. So it's like the Brock Purdy, like, this is going to be their quarterback. Like Kyle Shanahan, I feel like he's in football love because it's Matt Ryan wasn't his guy. Right? Matt Ryan was not. Kirk Cousins, why he truly liked.
I think
that was his idea.
He had to kind of twist Matt Ryan's arm.
I know, but definitely by the 2nd year they became tight. They obviously have a lot
for sure. I'm just saying it was not like this.
No, I know, but my point is, wouldn't you say that year, like the 2nd year, is one of the defining moments of Kyle Shanahan's career, turning that into an MVP in the offense?
Oh yeah, I mean that and I think probably the year that that Washington was, I don't know, like a top 3 NFL offense with Alfred Morris. That's another one that we don't talk about as much, but I think that's a pretty defining year in Kyle's career.
Wasn't the story that Mike sent Kyle to the little general in Nevada to learn the offense?
The pistol.
Yeah.
I mean, you couldn't have learned it anywhere else at that point in time.
Maybe like 3 of them went out there. Maybe it was like McDaniel and LaFleur or something.
Interesting. I don't remember that story, but I believe it. I mean, the timing.
Because they didn't know it. I mean, you watch Kyle, he's fucking calling play action plays to Hassan Reddick. I mean, they do something specific. Like they got to, like Steph Curry shoots threes. Kyle Shanahan calls his plays. He ain't running the pistol. I haven't seen him run the pistol since. He attempted to zone Reedy with Trey Lance. Fucking hated it. I mean, that is not his style. He dreams of running this offense, and he did at the highest level. Like the best his offense has ever looked, obviously, was in his career with Matt Ryan. It is now that again, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is the second best offense Kyle's had. You'd say the 19 team, we can look at the stats. They'll be about the same. But I would say this year, in terms of like what it could be because of Brock, I mean, his 4 best offenses were the year that he was 1, 2, or 3, whatever it was. He was a top 3 offense in Washington. The Matt Ryan year, the 2019 team, and this team. Those are Kyle's 4 best offenses in his career. And I'd say this one's better than the 19 offense because of Brock, and Ayuk's better. And I'd say it's definitely better than the Washington offense that he had. That statistically was excellent, but they did not throw the ball well. They were probably a bottom 10 passing team in the league. And then you got, the team that had, guess what? The quarterback was the MVP in the Matt Ryan year, whatever that was. What year was that? 18?
Matt Ryan? No,
yeah.
His first year was 17. It would have been 2016.
16. Okay. So like this and that team, those are his 2 best, and that guy won the MVP.
But 19, I guess all of his teams always have a huge rushing element, was very, very heavy rushing. They scored a lot of points. Only the Chiefs scored more. Do you know how many points the Chiefs, the 2 high scoring teams met in the Super Bowl?
Yeah.
Chiefs averaged 39 points a game. Never mind. That was the playoffs. My fault.
Oh,
my fault.
Okay.
That was the playoffs. I was like, how's that even possible?
What they average for the year? Like 29, 31?
The Niners averaged 29 points a game, but their rushing offense, that must have been Lamar's year to win the MVP. They were number 2. They were just a heavy rush team. Like this year, I mean, their passing game is so much better.
Well, they're 32nd in passing attempts.
Who is?
Year. The Niners.
I know, but they're way more explosive than they were.
Yeah, and they just play from ahead and they run the ball.
But Brock's good games, even when they dominate, are always going to be 25 or 32, right? He's just not going to have.
Lamar was 19.
He's not going to have the 47-yard pass attempt games unless it's a complete disaster.
Yeah, it's not good for them. But he's still.
I don't even think it's not good. That's just not the way he coaches.
But I just mean, like, we've talked about this. The guys who lead the league in attempts usually, like, look at who leads the league in yards this year. It's Stroud and it's Will Blackman. What's the guy's name? The quarterback, Washington.
Joe Theismann. Sam Howell.
Sam Howell. I don't know why I call him Will Blackman. He looks like a Will. But like those are your leading, so I don't.
But this is how they're going to build even if Purdy becomes an all-time great player, he's going to play in an offense like Sean Payton's offense looks like Sean Payton's offense.
Yeah.
Kyle's offense looks like Kyle's offense. I think sometimes on a given year, maybe he would if their running game didn't work. He'd have no choice. Like Andy Reid is an example this year. Andy Reid wants to pass the ball all the time. But Isaiah Pacheco is one of his best players. He's running the ball way more this year than he ever has. Like you look up a lot, he's getting 20, 25 attempts with one guy.
Because that's just his best playmaker.
Yeah, it's like they're averaging 5-6 yards a carry. He doesn't have a choice. I think Kyle, like Andy, there's a step between I don't have a choice and it's not working. And it's usually like, we're going to figure it out my way. Like that is the difference of like, I would say those 2 guys more than like Belichick doesn't have a scheme. And it's easy to make fun of now, but historically, like 20, like they some games they ran for 70 attempts. Some days they passed 70. They did whatever they have to do.
Yeah.
He's very unique. Like Kyle, his offense is going to look like his offense probably till the day he dies. I mean, elements, it'll adapt and change, but I just mean like there are specific things he loves to do because clearly the way he coaches and schemes a game plan is a build up to a play. And it's usually the run to pass, right? The run game or the pass game is set up to do the opposite with the other play. And sometimes like the Purdy play clearly, and honestly, maybe that Debo touchdown, where Reddick chased Purdy, maybe that wasn't necessarily like he set it up earlier. He just saw that and they're like, he's going to chase him no matter what. Let's use it against him. Maybe they knew that coming in, which is, I could have told you that. Like, he's fucking going to chase this guy.
Better get rid of the ball though. Andy, my analogy on Andy would be he's like, I don't know about your grandpa, but like, the old joke, like, duct tape will fix anything. Like Andy's just got Pat Mahomes and duct tape, and like the two of them together are just trying to figure it out this year, right? He's got other guys, but that's his.
They're a good example, like their offense, because of financially how they had to build their team and their quarterback got really expensive. They couldn't have like Debo, Ayuk, and Kittle. So they would just have one of them. And then they would be depending on, well, it's like they're Ty Davis and Danny Gray. If they became Danny Gray and Ty Davis, probably you'd be in major trouble. You're like, you try to patchwork it, right? Once your quarterback becomes expensive, you better fucking hit on that second round receiver because you're going to need the guy to play.
Yeah, I mean, that's the beauty right now of this team, right? Is you got a little time to figure out. Everyone's debating what is Brock, and the beauty is you don't have to know right now. The question is just, is he good enough to win you the Super Bowl? I know, from an MVP perspective, this week
he's a betting favorite, right?
He's the betting favorite. It was the first thing I checked Monday morning, and there he was. And Dak's right there too.
What was it?
And Brock is 3-1.
That's,
if I told you this, I'd vote for McCaffrey personally, but like, just go look, John. The last 5 years, the guys average like 43 passing touchdowns, the MVPs. There's a good chance nobody gets to 40. Dak might.
I think when you look historically what it takes for a running back to win it, their team kind of has to suck, and it's like Adrian Peterson runs for 2,500 yards off a torn ACL. Or Barry Sanders.
Christian Ponder to the playoffs.
Exactly. Barry Sanders has 2,000 yards and still splits it with Brett Favre. Split it. Guy had 2,000 yards, like one of the greatest players of all time. It's like, yeah, we just got to get Favre in there too.
So I'll put that aside. Let's talk about Brock versus Dak.
I did say it after the game. I think Christian McCaffrey can't really win it. I
think you're right.
I don't think it's possible, which is crazy to say. I mean, he's going to have, I would say, when it's all said and done, assuming he stays healthy the rest of the season, one of the great seasons in Niner history. Statistically.
Yeah.
So
it's one of the most special. It's one of the most special seasons that I've just watched from a player.
There is, like, for as big as the Niners are, and they're clearly, to me, there's like 5 or 6 teams that carry the league. There is one team, just in terms of, I'm talking importance of quantity, not for the league to like succeed, because the Cowboys never make long playoff runs. The Cowboys are bigger than everyone else. Their television ratings are bigger. They have more fans. They are talked about. They open the discussion if you can. Like if there's a crazy story with the Niners and a crazy story with the Cowboys, your lead would go Cowboys Niners, and then you just build your show around both of them.
And the Niners topic would be like, can the Cowboys beat the Niners? Which is fine. It doesn't. But I'm not like, I don't get offended by that. But
I think that, like, this week, if Dak Prescott throws 3 or 4 touchdowns, there's an element where he's been in the mix longer, fair or not. And listen, I actually like him a lot. I really do. I know we shit on him for the games against the Niners. It is pretty hard to play against the 49ers. Like, you're talking to someone who thinks training camp practices, especially now, have never been less relevant. But like, Brock Purdy gets punked by the Niners, like most people do when they play him. It's what made, like, when Joe Burrow did that, you're like, holy shit, this guy's good.
Mm-hmm.
But I think if he just sustains what he's doing and all things are equal, and they have the same record. I know the Niners beat him straight up,
right?
But people are going to hate to hear this. I think Dak would win it if all things are equal. And honestly, give or take a game. Like, if the Niners are 14-3 and they're 13-4 and Dak has more touchdown passes, like, Dak's going to get back-to-back games against the Eagles. Because never forget, like 2 weeks ago or whatever, when they played 3 or 4, he lit them up as well. And if he does that again, it's just a little bit, what have you done for me lately? Now, Purdy gets an enormous moment on, was it Monday Night Football, Christmas night? The Ravens defense is one of the best in the league. But if I was going to bet on this, which 3-1 odds are terrible with a guy that once upon a time was probably like 50-1, it's like, God damn, I wish I would have bought that stock cheap. I would imagine if things just maintain, like Dak keeps balling, Purdy keeps balling, that fair or not, I think Dak would win it.
Matt sent me a DM, our listener Matt. He said, strength of victory. Cowboys are 330. Niners are 532. Not a single one of the Cowboys' 9 wins have been against a team with a record above 500. You pointed out to me part of that was they beat Seattle to knock them under 500, but not a record above 500. He'll have 4 consecutive weeks against 500 teams or better coming up. So to your point, Dak's got a chance now. Who do they play after they play Philly? Or they play, who do they play after they play Philly? Do you have Dallas in front of you?
Yeah, no, I don't. But I just pulled up their stats. I mean, they're basically Dak Prescott is 26-6.
Yep.
Purdy's 23-6. They're both 70%. Dak has 3,200 yards. Purdy has, basically 3,200 yards too.
Yeah.
So
Dak's like 100 yards more, right?
100 yards more, 3 more touchdowns, and the same exact record. And winning and losing to me is a quarterback stat because all the best quarterbacks always won the most. But like Dak played shitty against the 49ers, right? He was awful that game. I remember Dante Whitner was like, that was terrible. And Purdy was good. But ultimately, like, Dak didn't play Purdy in that situation. The quarterbacks, they're playing the separate defense. I that's the respect I have for the Niners defense. It's like hard to play. They just punked Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, I think the question is, I think the heart of the question as it relates to Dak is, does the fact that Dak, because you said, Dak's been kind of waiting in the sense that every year Dak is just in the conversation. And I would argue that, on one hand, it's always the same kind of conversation just about with him, right? I went back and looked at Sando's tiers. He has, in 7 straight years, been a tier 2 quarterback in Mike Sando's tiers. This year, he was 15th at the last quarterback in tier 2. I think that feels a little low for him, but that's generally Dak Prescott.
Yeah.
That's generally where he lives, right? Is like, my guess is, I think he got 1 tier 1 vote, but to me, he kind of just lives in like the 8 to 12 range every year. Maybe some days he looks like a top 5 guy.
He's been better in 15. He's been better in 15.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. He's not 15. And I would guess he's going to be higher in the tiers next year. But, he's been part of the conversation. And so he's just kind of in, if it's a line, he's been waiting in the waiting room for a long time. But the conversation, now I said never when we talk about this. And you said, well, no, there was the 1 year. And you're right. The 2021 year, right? He threw 37 touchdowns. That's a high level year. And he's having a high level year this year. 37. He's not been in the waiting room of the MVP many years in his career. He's just been kind of in the conversation because he's the Cowboys quarterback, and he's kind of polarizing because people want him to be better most years.
Here's what they do. So they got Philly Sunday Night Football at home. At Buffalo, 225 Fox. I'd imagine that's the national game. The following week on Christmas Eve, at Miami. Then ESPN Monday Night Football, the Detroit Lions. Purdy gets the Raven game. I think that stack of games, if he balls out,
his to win.
Is his to win when you factor in his competition. But I'd also say, God damn, it's a tough stretch of football. That's Are the Cowboys, even if they beat the Eagles, are we sure they're locked to win that division then? Because those are at Buffalo, at Miami, tough little stretch right there.
So there's a difference between saying it's his to lose and it's his to win, and you're saying it's his. I don't know. Are you saying both? It's his to lose and his to win?
My point is, I have Purdy as an MVP caliber player. He's fucking awesome. Anyone talking shit about him is a moron. Doesn't know what they're talking about. I just know the way, like if I remove my emotion, just know the way the Cowboys kind of operate with this guy who a lot of people like. He's the man of the year. People like the guy, just like Purdy. Like he's a likable guy. He represents the NFL well. And if he has a 35 touchdown season and they start rattling up, and those are some of the best teams in the league. Miami's the number 1 seed. The Eagles are the number.
Be a worthy
they win
MVP.
the division.
Could they? Yeah. If they win the division,
Yeah, that's my point. If they win the division, given where they kind of were a couple weeks ago, the 49ers have kind of been in full control, beside a little stint that ultimately was less about Purdy and more about the defense. Now, Purdy had a couple shitty moments.
I think you'd happily have them win the division, have Dak have the MVP if you were the Niners, right? Because that means you're probably, provided you take care of your business, you're the 1 seed. So
either way.
But I also think Dak, I just want to say this, he is putting together an MVP worthy season on any team. If he were the quarterback of the Chiefs right now, if he were the quarterback of the Niners, if he were the quarterback of any of the good teams, he's going to lead the league in like several major categories on one of the best teams in the NFL. So Cowboys are not like, that is worthy for consideration. I'm not saying it's not.
Is Brock Purdy a lock true Pro Bowler right now?
How does he not end up? Yeah. I mean, the NFC quarterbacks are
one major problem, and it's a good problem to have. These are first-class problems. If Purdy wins the MVP in a second year, and they were to go on to win the Super Bowl, he'd be a year away from staring down. Like, the contract's kind of the contract.
You saying they're rooting against? You saying Parag doesn't want him to win the MVP? Doesn't change who he was.
By a couple years, Parag might be living in England, printing money, running the soccer team. It might not be. It might be Hampton or whoever his number 2 guy's problem is. But it starts validating things that there's no, hey man, let's just part of the team. $37 million a year, guarantee you $100 million. Like, you hang up that. I mean, you'd be talking in a couple years. I mean, $200 million guaranteed. Look at how much money, and you and I are probably on the high end of Herbert supporters. It's just a lot of stats and games that haven't mattered. Like, you start winning MVP, you start rattling off playoff victories. Like, it's shut up and call me back when you hit my number. A little Nick Bosa. This is my number, homie.
You don't think there's a discount when you're just, I was the last pick. They believed in me. I mean, hey guys, I'm happy to be here.
I think you'd be talking about a $200 million player.
Yeah. And and then it really does matter.
That's the going.
Matters. And then it really matters. Like, well, winning the MVP and being the most valuable player to your team are two different things, right? Like, there are years where Patrick Mahomes doesn't win the MVP, but the team with the MVP would trade their guy for him.
Well, if you were Brock Purdy,
so you have to be one of the most valuable players when that contract arrives.
Well, they're not allowed to. People keep asking me that are watching this why I'm wearing a Cowboy hat. It's in support of the Cowboys this weekend against the Eagles, because I want the Cowboys to win. Niners take back hold of that 1 seed, and we just let chaos ensue. Plus, I think it would put the Eagles in they'd start reeling a little bit. It's because kind of look at the schedule. I still wouldn't feel great about Dallas then rattling off a bunch of victories just because their schedule. But I do think it could put the Eagles in a little turmoil. The Niners were lucky. Their turmoil happened early in the season, and it was pretty ugly. Then they got to got to take a deep breath, and Trent and Debo came back.
And Wilkes went to the sideline.
Eagles would be out of kind of some options. Like, they would just need to – would they have like a players-only meeting? It'd be one of those.
Yeah, what are their moves? Goddard's not healthy. Lane Johnson, everyone says every week I see him. He's like, they ain't got it. And then I watch him. I go, oh, my God. I was thinking about this today in the car, John. So many years of Lane Johnson's career, I didn't realize he was one of the best freaking players I've ever seen. I watched him against Bosa on one groin.
He's good. He's good.
Which I don't know. Do we all have one groin? But I watch him on one groin, and I'm like, oh, my God, this guy.
Does Chip Kelly get credit for that pick? It was his first draft pick as head coach.
What number pick was it?
4.
Well, I have to go look at that draft. Sometimes those picks nobody gets credit for. You're like, yeah, we should. Everyone knew we were going to take that guy. Everyone would have taken him. Howie Roseman want that pick? Wasn't really.
I guess Howie was. No, he was technically the GM. Andy did take this guy named Eric Fisher, number 1. I think if he could redo that one, he would have taken Lane. That was his first year in the Chiefs. He had the number 1 overall pick, but I think Purdy's going to have to, in a weird way, go above and beyond, which is a little unfair. But ultimately, I think it's Russell Wilson, when he won that Super Bowl, who was not in his second year as good as Purdy. He wasn't. No one was talking about his MVP. A lot of people thought, what's this guy? He's more of a game manager. But within that next year, that team was so good. It was like, this is the price. And remember, Seattle was a little uncomfortable. Like, we got to pay this guy how much? Then he became a really good player. But remember, it kind of fractured the team. And that was more because they didn't like him. That's not the problem with Purdy, but it fractured their team in terms of economically, just because he won the Super Bowl so early. They had to pay him so much fucking money. It would get really, again, good problem to have. I don't think the Purdy conversation, if this is only getting started with the money coming down the pipe.
It's true. You think it's been crazy to this point.
Oh my God. But here's the thing. You throw 4 touchdowns in playoff games. You throw 3 touchdowns in a Super Bowl, and Mahomes or Lamar Jackson on the other side, and you win. What the fuck are we even talking about? Like, it's the whole point of the sport.
Well, exactly. I just looked up. I got MLB Network on, John. Winter Meetings, and Brad Paisley's promoting his new album. We're in the same hat as you.
What I don't understand, and I was at the gym today, and I looked up, and the winter meetings were on. You can't. You have to find a way. Your sport is broken. You have to make an event that, like, okay, well, all the top 7 guys are going to sign right now. That's what the NFL has, right? It's like Ohtani is just doing what? Like what?
Following Logan Webb on Instagram.
So he's just going to wait till February?
Yeah, because they'll wait. Yeah, exactly. The biggest money in the NFL happens first. The baseball's the opposite.
But it's an event. Like, there is no event with baseball.
Yeah, well, baseball has an event with no signings. Football doesn't actually have an event. Like, there's not like everyone in one room, but all the signings.
That's my point. Like the winter meetings is basically just a convention. Like, it's not.
Yeah, it's a job fair, is what it is. It's a job fair.
Because, like, when the combine happens and all these stories coming out, like, oh fuck, get ready for McGlinchey. You know to get ready because it's about to happen. It's like Ohtani could make his decision in early March. You're like, well, shit, I'm not waiting 3 months. Like, wait when it's ready.
I can't wait for this. I bet the story is coming. Like, Ohtani may not sign until after he's got his elbow rehab. Like one of those weird stories. He could sit, for 6 months. And
it's been like this for a while, but it sucks. Like, no one, if you were developing a business around sports, would set it up this way. They have to figure that out to make it relevant again.
Here's my follow-up to that Brock conversation for you. Niners lost to the Browns. Debo got hurt. Trent Williams got hurt. Even McCaffrey got banged up late, but Debo was out. Minnesota, they lost the game. No Debo, no Trent. Cincy, still dealing with injuries. That's the only thing that can stop this team from winning the Super Bowl. When you look around, kind of the MVP conversation, I think, is reflective also of the Super Bowl race. And that is that there are less elite teams this year, just like there are less elite MVP candidates this year. And the Niners are the same. The Niners have changed quarterback. They've upgraded, but I know what they look like in the playoffs. And most importantly, I know what they look like when they're fully healthy. And they have had multiple years under Kyle Shanahan. They have never won a Super Bowl under Kyle Shanahan, but every single year that they've been good under Kyle Shanahan, when healthy, they can look like the best team in the league. And I think that's what they are again. And the only thing that will and can stop them from winning the championship is health. Is Debo getting banged up, Trent Williams missing the playoffs, McCaffrey getting not whatever, Purdy. I saw Stephen A had a take today, John, that the 49ers just invalidated the Eagles NFC Championship game from last year. Now, good logic. Stephen A's got better depth and opinions than he gets credit for. He's not just a guy screaming. I disagree with that take. This is the game. People get hurt. People stay healthy. That's the way it works. I don't think they invalidated last year's NFC Championship game. I don't think Philly's as good this year, but
they were better last year.
Yeah, that is the only thing that can stop the 49ers at this point. When you look at Philly, when you look at Dallas, when you look at Miami, when you look at Baltimore, when you look at Kansas City, when you look at Buffalo, like all these teams that the ones that are equipped, when you look at Detroit, there is not anything out there that is a bigger threat to the Niners than their own health. That's it. That's the biggest threat to the 49ers is their health.
Do you think I could send DraftKings that Stephen A take and say, can I get my $2,000 back? Because last year when Max Homa won me $2K on Saturday night at Torrey Pines, and then I put it all in the Niners +2 or whatever the line was, and then the game was over when Purdy was on the fucking sideline, did they give it back? Or that's if you had played at the prizepicks.com/ham50, you would know that Prize Picks is the only daily fantasy, John, that gives you a refund if one of your players gets hurt. Nobody else does that.
but I don't think that DraftKings will do that for you.
No. I think they actually did some of that this year because FanDuel was not.
Oh, gotcha.
They started throwing bones. You know, when a guy was injured, it's like it's part of gambling. People get hurt. I mean, I don't know what to. But I'm with you. I think that I do think the 49ers would have won that game, but by no means they easily could have lost it as well. But what we witnessed was a joke, and you knew it at the time. Everyone watching it was like, "This is a joke," because it felt like. Didn't it kind of feel like the Super Bowl? I mean, obviously to go to the Super Bowl, but it felt like whoever won that game was going to have a huge advantage. Now it turns out the Chiefs won, but remember the Eagles were winning that game. Like they were going to be favored in the game against the Chiefs, and it was. I give them a lot of credit. And listen, it's pro sports; you get paid a lot of money to try to win. But let's face it, like being devastated can throw you off. They've responded pretty well. And the way they rallied around that quarterback, I mean, I think there's a level of belief. And listen, the Eagles have it too in Jalen that is very, very powerful. I think going way back, because part of when you're not like, everyone believed in Peyton Manning. Well, yeah, he was the number one pick. Or everyone believes in Trevor Lawrence. Like they were told to, they didn't even have a choice. It's like this guy's the franchise. When the guy's
one of the richest guys when he walks into the room.
When the guy's a later round pick, like you kind of got to earn some cred in the room. You know, you really do. And I think Russell always struggled with that till to this day. It's like, do people even like this guy? Dak did not, right? People really gravitated toward him. And I give you, like, you got to have that to be a really good quarterback. Jalen has it, and Purdy has it in spades too. And if you're then good with that quality, like, the fuck, this guy's the limit. Because, like, what if Brock Purdy just is what everything that we thought Baker Mayfield was going to be? Right. They drafted Baker Mayfield number 1 overall to be this, right? He was never going to be the biggest. He was never going to be the strongest, but he was going to be elite. And he just wasn't. And so far, Purdy in his starts, I mean, has been elite. I saw Chris Broussard had a great argument against Nick Wright about, you know, some of the MVPs and their yak percentage, because that's a low hanging fruit. Like, oh, Purdy just gets a lot of yak. The yak. You know that Purdy this year, in 2020, for his career, I think he's a little over 50%. It's like 51 or 52 for his, you know, if you factor in last year and this year. In 2023 alone, it's like either 48 or 49%. You'd be like, that seems pretty high. I don't have much context when I just heard that number. But then he threw up all the former MVPs. Mahomes, 18, was like 54. Lamar, his year was actually the lowest of the group, was like 50 or 49. A bunch of guys in the mid to low 50s. Tom Brady, like, is part of playing football is like you don't just catch and hit the ground, right? I mean, that's most of the teams. Like, and you look back to Tyreek and Mahomes and Kelsey in their heyday. I mean, it was a lot of like get the ball to them and let them cook. But because he looked on like, you know, he had the little Farvian quality. I just don't understand why people, I think it's a pretty easy one. Like, I didn't think he was going to be this good, and now he is. Why can't you just pivot? I thought Brandon Staley sucked. If Brandon Staley had just started winning Super Bowls, I'd have to say, like, Brandon Staley's pretty good. Like, I've always thought Sark sucked. Now, I would still preface by saying he has the highest payroll in all of college football, and his team is stacked, and the Big 12 is down. But I got to give the guy credit. I mean, his teams looked awesome this year.
Right.
Again, highest payroll, Big 12 down, but still. That's a fact. I don't understand. Like, if you just watched Brock Purdy last week and you came away like, yeah, still pretty overrated. And I think you could have a fair argument. Is he the most important player on the team? Like, yeah, they have very, very important players because they have Hall of Famers. But the argument, we just saw it with Florida State, how important the quarterback is. I was intrigued when I thought Sam Darnold was going to start. You were, probably everyone kind of was.
Yep.
It's pretty clear that even if he actually is much better than he's ever been, he ain't this.
While you're talking, I just
you don't know that.
So Mahomes last year, I love that stat you gave because it just made me think of like, well, let's go look at you know, air yards, right? You don't know, did the come after a 15-yard pass or a 3-yard pass would be part of the, like, was what I would want to know about that. But like Mahomes won the MVP last year, 41 touchdowns, 12 picks. Last year, Patrick Mahomes, 43% of his passes were considered short, which I don't remember exactly. I have to dive into the definitions here, but that's like my guess is that's within like 7 yards of the line of scrimmage. It's a short pass. But whatever that definition is, it's broken. The PFF breaks it down into 4 categories: deep passes, which I think are over 20-yard passes; intermediate, which are going to be
12 to 20.
Yeah, probably. So maybe short is within 10, whatever that short number is, and
Maybe
then behind the line of scrimmage.
Gotcha.
Those are the 4 categories.
So behind the line of scrimmage is not considered short.
No, that's a different category. I can give you the numbers on that.
I like that.
So Mahomes last year, 43% of his passes were considered short passes. And I'll tell you behind the line of scrimmage too. 18% of his passes were behind the line of scrimmage. So what is that up to? 61% were either short or behind the line of scrimmage. This year, Brock is the same exact percentage of short passes as Mahomes, 43%, same percentage. And his percentage of his attempts that are behind the line of scrimmage is, I can't even find him on this list. Didn't even show up on the list. I got to keep going. Hold on. That's the page. I don't know.
Well, like, for example.
Oh, you know why? Because he doesn't. Hold on a second. 14%. So, again, same exact percentage as Mahomes last year. 43% of their throws were short throws and a lower percentage of throws behind the line of scrimmage. Now, my guess is that Brock's going to have a big percentage on intermediate throws, right? Let's compare those two. Brock is 7th in the NFL. 23% of his throws are considered intermediate throws. And last year, Mahomes, my guess, John, is this going to add up to Mahomes having a higher deep ball percentage? And Mahomes was lower, 20%. So that means Mahomes, by a few percentage is going to have more of his throws will be deep balls.
Yeah, which would make sense. I mean, he's more of a deep ball. Like Purdy is not, I wouldn't call a deep ball thrower. Like, to me, my comp for him is, if he becomes what he's doing right now and sustains it, is much more the modern version of Brees. I think that's what he is. Like,
Brock's percentage is higher.
Down the field?
Brock has 11% of his throws are deep throws, and last year Mahomes was 9%.
Now, Tyreek had just left, right? I bet if you went to the MVP year, his, in 18 or whatever he first won it.
But the point is just, you don't have to beat, like, he won the MVP with those percentages, right?
41 touchdowns.
Yeah, 41 touchdowns. Yeah. But we're just talking about, like, does Brock make NFL throws is what that conversation is, right?
Which is stupid. Like, of course.
And the answer is yes.
But you know what's weird? And maybe the landscape was so different. Like, Drew Brees became one of the greatest players of all time, and his arm was never great. Peyton was just so good, no one really talked about his arm. Peyton's arm was pretty average.
Yeah, and got worse.
But he could make, and he did. Like, he pushed the ball down the field. But my point is, like, and maybe it's because, like, some of the best players right now, I mean, Mahomes' comp is like a better version of Favre. So that's, and the other guy, Josh Allen, is, probably the greatest physical freak we've seen as just a true quarterback since, like, Elway. So, like, that's just and we see those guys play in primetime, and we have for the last 4 or 5 years a lot. Like, that's kind of become the bar. Because Joe Burrow's just so good, but he's closer to Brock, I'd say, than he is those guys in terms of just the ball flying out of his arm, right? He does not throw. He throws a beautiful ball, but he does not have some I'm talking about Joe Burrow, yeah. Does not have some howitzer. I also think you can improve. Like, Jake Browning, watching him last night, his arm is stronger than it was for Chris Peterson. And Troy Aikman talked about, there was a moment last night in the broadcast where he's like, Browning's a really impressive guy to sit down with, and we talked to him a lot about, obviously Jake is your classic, like, Boise Chris Peterson type guy, right?
Yeah.
So just how seriously he's taken being a backup quarterback, and how he thinks he's improved dramatically, even though no one's ever get to watch him play. Just in that he works out with those guys like Burrow in the offseason and the training he does. Like, you get to improve. Like, Tom Brady looked a lot better by 2012 than he did in 2006. So part of Purdy is, like, you get to keep improving from an arm strength standpoint. He fucking said arm surgery.
But tell me this, from a scouting perspective, isn't physical traits part of what you have to use in order to project how much better where a guy's ceiling is?
Yeah, I mean, you would say, it's easy just to do this compared to a baseball pitcher. I would say Purdy right now hovers, 90 to 92. He's never going to get to 98, but can he get to 94 for a period from like 28 years old to 33 years old where he just throws it a little stronger? Or is this just got to be his arm strength his whole career? Because if it is, his margin for error is smaller if this is his arm strength his whole career, I would say.
Well, you're right. You're making the case like maybe his arm will get a little better when he's further removed from the elbow injury, which I think is
Brady's
totally
improved.
reasonable.
Brady's improved.
And a lot of that was like, some of the mechanics, right? Brady was super fundamentally mechanically fundamental.
Would you say Purdy would be, I mean, he's not going to the weight room's only going to do so much for him. He's going to have to get into that shit.
For sure. But I think the elbow thing, which we've kind of forgotten about because he's made us forget about it. You remember they were managing him right before the season. I think there is a reasonable chance that his arm, whatever 100% is, it's not that, right? It's clearly good enough. It's not that he can't put forth full power, but it's just maybe he has to manage it, warm towels, whatever, in a way that he may not have to in the future. Or maybe he always will do that. But I think it's something we forget about that, you think about his arm, he came back looking as good or better considering. Pretty crazy, which sometimes happens with with some of the elbow surgeries, but sometimes doesn't. And for him, it did. But the comparison.
That's what Ohtani's telling everyone right now, asking for $778 million.
Yeah, Ohtani's like, I saw the other day is like, make him a closer, and then he can just pitch less and come back sooner because you don't have to stretch him out to like 7 innings. Yeah, that's right, Smalls. So and then you can throw harder, but the comparison to Breeze, I get why people don't look at Breeze and go, oh, Brock must be that. Because Breeze, Breeze, San Diego decided they had to move on. Miami failed him on the physical. It wasn't obvious right away that Drew Brees was going to become Drew Brees. And when you don't have the super
Danny
human
Cannell's
arm, Danny Cannell's dad?
Was the doctor.
Was the doctor that failed him on the Nick Saban led Danny Cannell's dad failed Drew Brees? Mm-hmm. That, I mean, God, if you're about to go into the knife, John, you're like, Doc, have you ever, what have you done? Like, well, I failed Brees. That's a tough, you gotta, but he's probably saved some lives. So
Dan Cannell, I would say
Dr. Dan, on that one. Dr. Dan Cannell. I mean, a lot of pressure, a lot of millions of dollars getting invested. Saban's on your ass.
You see, well, I saw a headline. It's like, a little late, but was Dan Cannell right? Drew Brees says he can't throw. His shoulders that fucked up.
He has to throw with his other arm.
Yeah, for his kids.
Crazy.
Like he can't even go to their little league practice or flag football and play catch. It's like, my dad's Drew Brees. Can I play catch with him? He's like, no, he actually can't throw.
I want to see a Drew Brees spiral. And he like pulls out left-handed and just. But it wouldn't shock me if we fast forward 4 years, Brees that like throws a pretty spiral left-handed. Wouldn't surprise me.
Not at
Didn't
all.
Brock start throwing with the other hand this offseason?
Well, remember Kittle on the sideline, like, Brock, you got anything in lefty?
I do remember that, yeah.
Modern medicine, who knows? If you can do hip replacements, knee replacements, could you do a shoulder replacement when Breeze is like 55 and he can throw normally?
Breeze is an exception to the rule. And so when we talk about Brock, the question is Brock an exception to the rule? That's what you're trying to identify. And when we're talking about exceptions to the rule, people are going to be slow to adapt and change their opinions, which is irrelevant, really. It doesn't matter at all. But I get it. Like I'm not one of these people that goes, it's one thing to not see it. It's another thing. I think it's fair to go, well, is this the same as CJ Stroud? Would you if you put Brock on the Texans right now, would he be an MVP candidate in the way, Stroud's not a legit MVP candidate, but he is, he's going to be on those leaderboards and he's elevating that franchise. Would Brock do that? I think most people would answer, oh, he couldn't. He couldn't like that. But maybe the answer in 5 years, we'll look back and go, yeah, actually the answer would have been yes. Maybe that's the answer. I don't know. But he's not on that team. He's on this team. And I know this team hasn't won a Super Bowl and they're better with him. So, I think with him, you just got to be very open to the possibility that he'll keep surprising you, because what he's done to this point is one of the most surprising things that anyone has ever done in the history of the sport or any other sport.
Now, they would never publicly on record even get into this debate because it's not worth it. But like if you were sitting down having a beer with Slowick, D'Amico, and just, CJ, what he's doing is incredible, especially when you factor in his team. But like if CJ disappeared tomorrow and I gave you Brock Purdy, would you two guys, having been around him, you, D'Amico, coached against him forever as a scout team guy, feel good about it? My guess is they would say yes, right?
They feel good that they'd be okay, or feel good that they were going piece for piece replacing CJ Stroud.
I'm just saying, if I said CJ disappeared tomorrow and you just had Purdy for the next couple of years, would you feel good about your team's ability to succeed? I think they would say yes.
Yeah.
Again, what CJ's having, like Dan Marino level, greatest season of all time for a rookie. What he's doing. But this gets back to the whole conversation. CJ Stroud was the second overall pick. He went to Ohio State. People were nitpicking him, right? Like you do nitpick a top 2 or 3 pick in college. Even Drew Brees.
It does pass the eye test too, though.
100%. But I'm saying, like, when you are a super high pick and you are good, it's like, fuck, they knew it. When you are, even Drew Brees was the first overall pick in the second round. He was picked 33, or I technically 32. So someone must have got in trouble and got a pick stolen. But part of what Purdy, like if Purdy was Drew Brees in the sense of he had been the 49ers somehow got picked 33 and they had just got the first pick in the second round, I think we would talk about this differently. I think when you kind of come out of nowhere, people want to assume you suck. Yeah. Really.
But that it's not real. At least to me, that they assume it's not, can't be real.
Because if Purdy had looked like Bryce Young, people are like, of course this guy fucking sucks, 7th round pick. But I hear countless people saying this, and I don't have a dog in the fight. Like I thought he was an awesome player in college. Clearly it's been a disaster. People are like, I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt. I'm giving Bryce time. If Bryce was the 7th round pick, or hell, a 4th round pick, I don't think people would talk about him like that. So the pick where you're selected shapes the narrative, how just people are going to feel about you. You just get more time.
But also you are that pick because there is something real or perceived in terms of deficiency, right? And he has them. Size would be one. Arm strength.
But Drew Brees was 6 feet tall.
Yeah, I know. And went in the first round.
And he's slower than Purdy.
I know.
Similar size. He does have.
Played in the Big Ten. Right?
10 plus inch hands. He has over an inch on Purdy's hands.
There was something about him. I don't remember really that. There goes John. Where did I go? My guess, he accidentally clicked his way off. He's got new fiber internet. While you were gone, I guess that you just accidentally pushed something.
I did.
Yeah. Here's a question for you. CJ Stroud, right now, the Texans are 7-5? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah,
6,
they're 7-5.
Not I don't think legitimate MVP candidate, but they play the Jets, the Titans, the Browns, the Titans, the Colts. Miracle finish. They win 5 in a row to end the year, which actually
they don't play. Have they already played the Jags twice?
They have played the Jags. They just lost to them. Where's their other Jag? And they beat them week 3. So yeah, they've played the Jags twice. Jets, Titans, Browns, Titans, Colts. If they go 5 straight to end the year and they go 12-5, is he back in the MVP race?
He's 20-5.
He's got to throw. Say he's got to throw. Yeah, you're right. Because he'd have to throw like 15 touchdowns.
I think he's also playing a lot of games at 10 a.m. Pacific time.
Regional.
Yeah. I think it'd be hard for him to pass both. I think it's borderline impossible. I think Dak would be the leader in the clubhouse, assuming everyone sustains their play, given his opponents. Like Purdy couldn't, even on Monday night, let's say the Niners won 25-15, but he only throws 1 touchdown. Like his margin for error, do you agree, is smaller than Dak's?
I do agree.
Ultimately, like
also his team could just win big games without him throwing for 300 yards. Dak's team can't.
No.
Or won't.
Well, like 27 million people watched what's it called? Niners, Eagles, right?
Mm-hmm.
How many people are watching Sunday night? 35?
Eagles, Cowboys, yeah. How many people are watching Christmas? Niners, Ravens.
I'm gonna lie. I would imagine more people watch. Again, I don't know what all these people at their house impacts the MVP. I'm just saying.
No, I know.
It's. I would guess that it's the highest rated Sunday game of the year so far this season. The Niners play. I mean, they're right there, but there's just Cowboy, like it or not. I mean, there's a reason all their fucking guys are on television. They're like, they're like in control of the league, and they don't even win. I mean, they do win regular season games.
They win enough to be relevant.
I don't think Jerry gets enough. Can you imagine if Jed was the equivalent of Jerry? Like Jed was like part of the personnel group, and the Niners were just always viewed as like one of the great drafting teams of all time. Like the Cowboys just put together sweet rosters a lot.
Yeah, I know. But it also feels like Jerry's might be what holds them back in a weird way too, right?
But I'm just talking about from a team building. Like, what if Jed
Jerry,
also
the
had his
GM,
hands on this?
If Jerry was not the owner and was just the general manager of the Cowboys for the last 40 years, Hall of Fame GM.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Now is Jerry watching like Deron Bland? Like he's actually not. He's not a GM that way. He's really just entitled for his ego. How much film is? Remember, Jerry was like, "Yeah, I was told Trey played really well against the Bears." Remember, he said that. He's like, he was great against the Bears in some crazy weather. It's like, Jerry, you didn't fucking watch one snap of that game. Good against the Bears. Jerry, turn on the film. Does Jerry even have a clicker in his office?
No.
I mean, truly.
No
chance.
John, few super chats here. Gammon says, as a fellow bald man, your headgear game is inspiring, giving us confidence. I'm ready for the world and all of these long-haired slick daddies. Purdy isn't going to sign a team-friendly deal, nor should he. He's already the NFL's most team-friendly 4-year deal. And here is 10 of, I don't know, whatever R $10 is. I don't know what that is, what currency that is. You know what's funny, says Jonas? Same people bashing Purdy this year compared to Mac Jones, Baker are coming around, but never talk about their earlier comparisons. It's $2. Oh, he said it in the thing because he knew I was going to go, how much money is this? $2. So there you go. That's what 10R is. Rupees? 10 rupees? All right, 10 rupees. Somebody asked a question on here. They said, are the Niners going to draft Chuba Purdy?
Like
Brock's younger brother.
You know how the Bucks
is it Chuba or Chuba?
I call him Chuba.
Okay.
I don't know.
Yeah.
You know how the Bucks always has like Giannis's brother from Greece, who's just, I don't even know what he's doing. It was just
they put him on like the G League team too, though.
If you told me, saves you a couple million to build the squad, you got to do what you got to do.
Well, that's in the contract negotiation, right?
Didn't you say he threw one of the worst picks you'd ever seen against Iowa?
He did not have a great game. Yeah, it was a bad late game interception. Iowa also threw a bad late game interception. Iowa's quarterback looks like he's Roethlisberger in costume, big guy, but
must not be very good because they don't score many points.
One of the most maligned 9-3 conference championship participants. I don't know. I haven't looked at their
10-2.
Oh, 10-2, not
10. They were 10-2.
Oh, so they had a chance to get to 11-2. All right, so they got a chance to go win 11 games this year.
Yes.
Fired their OC during the season, but let him finish out the season.
I think that I just saw the DC, was the Broyles Award, whoever the best assistant coach, like they had like one of the best defenses in the country. Yeah, their defensive coordinator.
Yeah. Deserves it.
Honestly, they feel like for the last 5 or 6 years, like a Brock Purdy away from fucking being a national championship contender. They just can't. A lot of CJ Beathard's.
There's a long gap between whatever and finding a franchise quarterback.
But in fairness to Chuba Purdy,
I think it is Chuba. The more we say it,
McCaffrey has a lot of brothers who aren't any good. Like, listen, most families aren't Travis Kelce and Jason Kelce or Eli and Peyton, right? If you get 4 kids playing Division I football and one becomes an NFL star, it's pretty
playing
impressive.
Quarterback in Nebraska is short. Yeah, that's impressive.
Well, less impressive now than maybe 1997, but still, it was an impressive feat. I couldn't do it.
Yeah, he's no Eric Crouch or Tommy Frazier, but Scott Frost.
I love it when like a starting quarterback.
Well, Scott Frost switches safety.
Everyone knows like Cam Ward's getting paid, but like a guy that's just had his team just went 11-1. People thought he was good. Like Ohio State's quarterback is transferring. It's like, yeah, he was clearly told we don't want you back, buddy.
Yeah.
Or the money stopping.
Dylan Gabriel in the portal, Oklahoma. It looks like the reports are Oregon.
Did you see the Tyrus Thompson? Is that his name? Ty Thompson? Whoever there. Do you remember that 5-star? Like their Devontae Moore?
Yeah.
Tweeted a picture of like 2 years ago at like the conference championship game or some bad loss. Just like, I'm waiting for my time. It's like, I would transfer, buddy, because your time.
He posted an old photo, but he said, I'm waiting for my time. Just
or
recently.
something like that, like from 01. Because he's been there now a couple years, right?
Yeah, this is at least his. I think he just finished his 3rd year. He was there with Joe Moorhead and Anthony Brown. So yeah, he just finished. He's going into his senior year.
I go back and forth. Like it would piss me off if I was like a diehard Oregon fan. Like I would like to just hit on a freshman that we get for 3 years.
Right.
But it's like, it's hard for me to blame the coaches for just like, Dylan Gabriel's more than likely going to be better than any, 18-year-old that we're going to get.
I think they just
I'm pretty sure Oklahoma just had like the second best offense in the country, right?
Yeah, I think they have a commitment from one of the top quarterbacks in the country too, Oregon.
But here's the thing: if in like a year, okay, it's cool. What if they're like, this guy's not as good as we think? We're just going to get the next Bo Nix, or we'll just keep. Like Oregon might do this for like 10 straight years.
Yeah, ideally you can do it for. It's got to be ideally it's a 2-year guy, right? It's about to get harder with your COVID guys kind of phasing out of college football, right?
Well, because Dylan Gabriel is a transfer. Now he's a grad transfer. Like how many?
Dylan Gabriel went to UCF. He enrolled at UCLA for like 18 days. He was on campus. Then DTR came back. So he went to Oklahoma. And now he's going to go somewhere else.
Well, the guy, Moore kid, the UCLA 5-star, he's transferred.
Portal.
Do you think, is that one of those that they clearly realize he's not good enough?
Or he might be like, you know what? I want to go to Michigan. Let me go back home. I'm going to go to Michigan State.
Well, here's the problem. You're a 5-star guy like him, and you are forced to play, and you're not good. Let's face it, his value right today is not as strong as it was a year ago, right?
Right.
How could it be? Didn't he throw like 4 straight games, pick sixes?
Yeah, didn't look great. Was put in some tough spots, like on the road, the Oregon State, I think. I mean, played some tough games. But
I wanted to like him because he's clearly pretty good athlete, strong arm. He's not very good.
I should have just gone with Garbers the whole time.
Raiders backup quarterback?
I saw the Chase, Ethan. I saw Chase. Somebody tweeted Chase like, bring him back as the QB coach. And he's like, call me. He like tweeted like, call me. You saw Dan Hawkins retired at UC Davis.
Yeah. Who they just hired the cow guy that was a UC Davis guy?
I'm trying to think of other. Yeah, there's a bunch of dudes in the portal.
A lot of quarterbacks.
Everybody's in the portal. Riley Leonard, I think they said he's going to go to. People think he's going to go to Notre Dame. The Duke quarterback. Cam Ward. Yep.
I mean, I would say that he was rumored Ohio State, and then the Ohio State quarterback goes in the portal. Does that have?
Yeah, that feels connected.
If you're Cam Ward, you go to Ohio State, you'd have a chance to. I text a couple people. I'm like, what round do you have him in right now? They're like, probably earliest, late third, but with some of these quarterbacks missing consistently, he's probably more of a 4th or 5th guy. But you go to Ohio State and he is awesome next year, you could fucking vault up. I mean, everyone
because his talent is first. He's got 1st-round talent, I think, arm strength and athleticism, but it just hasn't. He hasn't played well consistently.
I hope he goes to Ohio State.
Yeah, I mean that'd be awesome. I think
if Oregon fills their spot,
DJU's in the portal.
Well, USC doesn't have a quarterback, right?
Well, they have like the last year's top, like a commitment from one of the top guys in the country, Malachi Nelson. But
I mean, I would say that Lincoln, I did get Caleb as a freshman, that worked out, so maybe he feels good about his ability to like, if he really likes one of these young guys, he'll just play him.
Yeah, could be
pretty difficult.
First year in the Big Ten.
Yeah, that would be hard.
But your defense better get better fast.
Well, I saw Anthony Lynn's kid was like, I watched a little bit of our tape. I don't think we're that far away. I'm like, I don't know if we watch the same team then, buddy.
I would say we're definitely far away, and then you get so much quick. Cam Rising's coming back. Yep. At Utah. How about that one?
Chip had an incredible line on him. Did you see
no.
We tried to keep him, but clearly we weren't in the same ballpark.
Oh, I did see that line. I thought you meant about Cam, yeah.
How does this guy just get to take subtle shots at everybody, even though that's factual? Like, give me a break. I'm so tired of that guy. Even though what he's saying is correct.
Yeah, and
I wanted to keep him. We didn't have the money.
And it's kind of,
Well, Chip, you're the only guy in the
Crazy.
program making any cash.
Fortunately, coaches can't use their money for NIL. Heartbreaking.
Well, like Chip, you could have gave. You want to keep this guy? I'm like, you're making $7
I'd be
million.
in favor. That would be a rule change I'd be fired up about, John. Coaches' salaries, they are eligible to donate to their own NIL collective. I think you find out how bad they want to win.
Jim Harbaugh said he'd gladly do it.
Then you find out real quick how bad you want to win.
It's an easy one to say because you know it's not allowed.
Yeah, well,
right?
that's exactly right. All right, tip your cap once.
We coming.
All right, everybody. Thanks for hanging. Adios.
I see Dion a lot of places that aren't.
This thing hasn't hung up yet, I don't think. Still going. We're still on.